We can go ahead and do with the substance of the bill. Before I turn you on down there on the podium mic, let's have a word of prayer. I think we need some prayer real quick. I think the day needs some prayerful consideration. Lord, we do thank you for this day. Thank you that you've allowed us to be here and take care of the business of the state. We ask your blessings on this meeting and on these members. We thank you for their service. Thank you for these that's all in the room with us. Bless us this day in Jesus' name. Amen. Turn your phones off. I hear mine beeping like crazy here, if you would. Matt's got the originals.
I'm getting copies right now. I'm going to text Matt and tell him not to have to make copies because I am.
Okay. I'll tell him.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be right back with those.
Can't turn it off here.
All right. I told him. Podium mic is on. This bill came out of your subcommittee yesterday, I believe, Chairman Dixon.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 402 was given due pass recommendation coming from the subcommittee. It is a substitute that we will have very minor changes, so we can go ahead and tell you the background of the bill and deal with when they get the copies here. We can show you just the at least what I remember as the substantive change. If you have not read the bill or don't know what the bill is about, there are a number of narcotic treatment programs in the state of Georgia, and it appears that in our state, the rules and laws that govern the creation and registration of these centers is somewhat lax. Chairman Mullis pointed out yesterday, Tennessee, which is roughly half the population of Georgia, had, what did he say, 11 treatment centers, and in the state of Georgia we have 67 of them. 8 of them within a few miles of his home, which is out in the middle of nowhere in northwest Georgia. So there obviously is something that needs to be looked at. The purpose of the bill is to, first of all, create a moratorium on the registration of new treatment centers. And then secondly, it creates a commission, the members of whom will be appointed by the Speaker of the House, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor. And this commission is to look at these rules and determine where our weaknesses are and make recommendations for legislative changes to plug the holes. The commission will last only for 1 year. It will be disbanded after that year. The one major change you would see is that in the original version, it was to become effective upon the signature of the governor, and the copy you're getting handed now has it become effective June 1st. And the purpose of that was there are some individuals who have been in the process of creating a registration of a new unit, and this would give them a little time to finish up that registration. And as long as they have the registration turned in by June the 1st, they would be able to create their units. Good.
We didn't have a sign-up sheet here, but if anybody wants to be able to speak for or against
we have
the
one
bill,
who would like to speak for it.
Okay.
Josh.
And if anybody likes to speak against it, we can do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Josh Mackey, representing the Opioid Treatment Providers of Georgia. They're the association that represents these narcotic treatment programs. We want to thank Senator Mullis for working with us when he had a concern about this issue, letting us have input. As Chairman Dixon has pointed out, The beginning part of the bill, the substitute, is just outlining the rationale for the moratorium. Section 2 actually sets up the commission and the appointments from the legislative and the executive branch. And then the last part of Section 2 is actually instituting the one-year moratorium, and then also providing a couple caveats to allow people that are currently licensed to do renewals or change of locations, standard things like that, to not be affected by the moratorium, and for those with pending applications before the state for new facilities to also be exempted from the moratorium. And that's basically the crux of the bill.
Everyone should have before them now, and if anybody in the audience would like copies, we've got multiple copies now. We can lay copies down front if anybody wants to get a copy of the bill. We got lots of copies now. Everybody made copies. LC 37219-3S is what we're working from. There was a Section 1 added that just explains the need for this program. They added a little bit in Section 1 that explains the need, but the gist of the bill was moved over to Section 2, and the changes there were where it had, I think, narcotic treatments. Is that correct? We changed some of those places to opiate treatments. Am I right there? No, we changed.
We did the reverse.
We did the reverse.
So the technical name for these under state regulations is a narcotic treatment program, and we had left in opioid treatment program in one spot, so it was a typographical error. So we changed that. We changed the effective date to provide a clear effective date rather than upon the signature of the governor. And as you mentioned, Section 1, most of that language was in the bill. We just rearranged it to make it sort of a preamble to the bill. So there's only two real changes, substantive to the bill and the substitute.
That was on 93. We added it. No, I'm sorry. Line 87. The effective date would be June the 30th. I'm still wrong.
Got 2007.
I'm trying to.
On line 95.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't look far enough. The act shall become effective on June the 1st, 2016. Right. The commission stands abolished January 1st, 2017. Okay. Number 16 has a question.
Hey, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to direct this to Mr. Mackey, but it's just things that make me go, huh? Mm-hmm. So I'm to understand that these narcotic treatment centers that the representative, Chairman Dixon, talked about, that we think we may have too many of them, and 8 of them in a certain area that treat narcotic addiction, I suppose, with a lesser or a different sort of narcotic over time, whatever's medically appropriate. I'm not a doctor, right? But that's what they do. They help people medically. Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Chairman, I guess this is just kind of crossing committee bounds, but I am at a loss, and this is nothing against this bill. I appreciate this. I would even support maybe even a longer look at it than 1 year. But I am, I guess, at a loss here that we can have these all over the place without the need for a certificate of need. But if somebody wants to build another cancer hospital to treat people, they can't. That gives me pause, Mr. Chairman. Just something to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but we're not looking at CON in this bill.
No, sir. Well, we could, but
no, I will not accept any amendments on here for that.
The question, I guess, Mr. Chairman, I guess what the question is, would that be something that this commission may look at? And I'm not suggesting that go to CON, but might they look at the number that are in a given area as to the level of treatment that's being given and that sort of thing? It's a serious question.
It is, the bill is open-ended, really, as to what the commission can look at in terms of trying to take care of this problem. I mean, he pointed out yesterday, the gentleman who spoke, in Tennessee, part of that process is a CON process. That's not necessarily what we need to do, but the commission would be open. I mean, they would have the ability to look at it from that perspective if they chose to.
And last question, but to be clear, I'm not advocating that goes under the CON. I was just wondering that I just found it ironic that something where we do may have too much of something going on doesn't, and we have a lot of good things going on in other places. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. And I'm trying to remember the drug that was mentioned that they treat.
Methadone?
Methadone?
Yes, sir. Primarily, the main focus of these programs is to use methadone for people that have opiate addictions.
Okay.
It's a long-standing practice. We've had some facilities in the state over 20 years. They're very heavily regulated from the Drug Enforcement Agency. And there have been other states, including Alabama, that have done a moratorium. This is not unprecedented. There's probably about 6 states, 7 states across the country. Alabama did a multi-year moratorium through regulatory powers. We're not choosing to do this that way. It's going legislative, and I think everybody is comfortable with doing a limited moratorium. When you do it regulatory, it sometimes tends to drag on into multi-year. But this provides kind of a temporary stopping measure and then a way to figure out a solution.
Okay. We got a couple more questions, if you don't mind. I think number 18 was next.
Yes. My understanding is that the reason Senator Mullis is in my district as well has the multiple numbers in them is that we border Tennessee and Alabama, which people then come over. Is there any restrictions on crossing state lines when there's...
There is not, and even though we are providers, our members are also advocates for this because it does better people's lives. We would not like to see a restriction on cross borders because there are people in other states, say in Alabama, that may need to get services and can't because of regulatory restrictions. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we do have a concern about the proliferation of these services along borders. We definitely don't want to prohibit treatment. We want people to be able to get treatment. So, it's kind of a tricky aspect there.
Thank you.
We did have a gentleman yesterday speaking subcommittee, Jonathan Cannell. He's the CEO of Private Clinic. They're out of Albany. I think he said he had, 3 clinics, I believe he said?
Yes, sir.
And talked about
He was chairman of their association.
Yeah, he's chairman of the Opioid Treatment Providers of Georgia.
60% of the facilities in the state, approximately, are part of that association.
That's right. We asked that question. One more. Number 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question about methadone treatment. And so this is going to be like a methadone treatment center? Is that?
That's what this is totally about. These are all treatment centers. Mm-hmm. But the issue is not necessarily the methodology of treatment.
Okay. I'm curious as to why we use methadone. I actually had an opportunity to meet someone that was addicted to heroin, and he was on methadone trying to get off of heroin. But he said methadone was so much worse than heroin because he said if you try to kick heroin, you're sick for 3 days, but if you're trying to kick methadone, you're sick for like a month and a half. And so it's really, really hard for them to get off the methadone. And so I don't know that that's a good course of treatment if it's getting them more addicted longer.
I will tell you that nationally there are plenty of studies out there to show that methadone does help a lot of people get off of opiate addictions, but it isn't for everybody, and that there are alternative programs, alternative treatments. There's non-narcotic based treatments, and I think we even have a line in the substitute to suggest that the commission look at non-narcotic based treatments.
Okay, yeah, because his feedback to me was this stuff should be banned. It's not a good substitute for trying to get off of heroin. He said it actually makes it worse.
I'll be happy to get the association to provide you some information, national studies that show otherwise, but I would definitely agree that it's not the right treatment for every person on an individual basis.
All right, thank you.
I believe line 65 talks about these programs could be assessed for meeting the narcotic treatment program goal of the individual addict that is recovering. So there's different ways of looking at it. Thank you, ma'am. Number 22.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on that real fast, and I agree with you. There may be some problems there, but in doing some talking yesterday, I mentioned this. All of us have had the opportunity to vote for the governor's criminal justice reform package. And one of the things that we've done is the accountability courts, the drug courts, and trying to give people a second start. I think it's probably a pretty fair statement to say that this program that we're talking about is basically nothing but a tool and something like that. It's just one of many options. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would agree with that, yes.
Okay, great. And Mr. Chair, if whenever the time's right, I'll be glad to do whatever.
Is there any more questions from anybody in the committee? Anybody in the audience need to say anything towards this legislation? All right, sir. If not, we are open for a motion.
Move that we do pass.
All right, this is committee substitute to House Bill, Senate Bill 402, LC 37219-3S. Have a move. Number 16.
Second.
We have a second. All right, all in favor of that number saying aye. Any opposed, no. All right, I'm sorry.
I did want to just inquire if the chair would.
All right, let's back up on the vote then. We got a question. Yes, sir, you're up.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but the gentleman mentioned a longer moratorium. Just for people planning, I just ask the chair if he thinks it's not best, I'll not make the amendment. But would it be advisable to the commission's going to be abolished January 1st, 2017, knowing that they may come up with something, and we oftentimes get told by the department when this comes forward, they need time for rules and regulations in order to implement so that people properly plan. Would it be something to consider to make the moratorium go till June 18, still have the legislation be acted on in 17, and if everything could be done when we got here, you could always shorten the moratorium, but I just wonder for people's planning purposes, it may well take beyond 2017 to do that. If the chair in his wisdom thinks that's not necessary, I will not make that amendment, but I spread that to ask, and I'd yield to the gentleman that's the author.
I would hesitate to make that judgment for Senator Mullis without him being here. It's obviously because it is a substitute. It's going to have to go back over.
Fair enough.
For action in the Senate. If you want to talk to him about making an amendment to that in the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was going to be my suggestion. He's going to have an agree-disagree over there since this is a change to his bill. So I would probably recommend if he wanted to go to a longer, you're asking about a longer moratorium?
Yes, sir, just simply because it would allow people that are looking to expand the business or do more business to plan accordingly, because if the commission comes back with recommendations at the end of next year, we always hear from the departments, they have to, I believe they have to publish rules and they have to go through a rulemaking process that sometimes could be more than 6 months. So if people are looking at this going, the moratorium is going to end next year in June, but it goes further than that, we would find ourselves this year maybe making that go longer, but I'm certainly willing to check with the senator. My goal was to make it easier for those and more predictable for business, not the other way around.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that if that's what he wanted to do. If you and he wanted to work that out and let him change it, and
yes,
it comes
sir,
back over, we could do another agree in the House.
Perfectly
That's
happy
what
to
he wants.
speak with Chairman and Chairman Mullis.
That would be good. All right, we've had the move and a second and a vote, but we're going to go back since we've had questions on this, if it's all right. We got the move and a second. All in favor of this, say aye again, please. Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, this bill passes. Now, committee, I had hoped we was going to be able to have one meeting and get 5 bills out, but we are doing this piecemeal right now. We're having a subcommittee meeting, we're having a meeting. We're having a subcommittee meeting, we're having a meeting. It's not worked at all like my plan had gone. What I had sort of planned was to have subcommittee meetings and have one meeting get this out. We're getting down to the wire. We had to cancel a subcommittee today because legislation's not ready. We've got 2 other bills we're working on. We have 3 Senate bills left in committee. If we can't, and they are 319 professional counselors that we've heard this year several times. 369 fireworks that we have heard. And we got 1 bona fide coin-operated amusement machine bill, 388. What may happen if we can't get subcommittees on these, we're going to have a meeting next Tuesday at 2 o'clock, Lord willing, and we don't go through session till 4. But we may wind up having to hear these bills in full committee next week and take action because time is drawing nigh to get these bills out. So if we can't get subcommittees moving on these, we will hear them in full committee next week. So just make you aware of that. Anything else for the good of the order? I appreciate y'all being here. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.